And good afternoon to everybody, and welcome to Real Talks. My name is David Steele. So I have had the last couple days off, and I figured that I was going to take a couple days off, but I told you guys that I was going to actually give you this, but I said I kind of um, I wasn't going to. Long story short, I watched it the other night again, my second viewing, and not only did I really like it, I mean, I liked it the first time. I think it was like my fifth or sixth best film in 2023, but I picked up a lot of things that I didn't do through the first viewing. And so, yeah, so I wanted to give you guys this. And so this is, as I said, I think my fifth or sixth best film of the year, and it's Equalizer 3. Um, I really like this movie, guys. um, so a little backstory. Um, Hello, Dadpool. How are you? A little backstory about the film. Okay, is that once again this is Denzel Washington reprising his role as Robert McCall, and so this is so. Let me even backtrack further. So anybody who's not familiar with this is based off of a 1980s um, television show, and it was called Equalizer, and it starred Robert Woodward, and it's the same premise. He basically goes around to certain areas and basically settles the score, equals the score, and so this we have Denzel Washington, who first came into this role in, I would say, 2016. And the first one was very good. I liked the first one. It took me a couple of times to warm up to it, but I really, really enjoyed it after the fact. Um, so, yeah, once again, he's coming back, reprising his role as Robert McCall. And I took a lot of notes, and I want to go through some of this stuff with you guys because I think it's fascinating to actually sitting down and watching a movie multiple times, especially this kind of film, because this is an action movie, right? This isn't your Poor Things or your Oppenheimers or no. This is an hour and 46 minutes, but it picks up, right? You have three distinct acts, and we'll talk about that in a couple minutes. But it's like there are three distinct acts, and then it all just so anybody who isn't familiar with this, okay, 20 years ago, Denzel Washington starred in a little movie called Man on Fire, okay, and that is a very, very, very young Dakota Fanning off to his left as a 5 or 6 year old, I believe, 7 year old, and everybody was just ecstatic when they heard the news that she was going to be coming back. Like, oh my God, they're going to reprise. She's coming back to work with Denzel, and it was like, okay, now it's going to be fun. And because when I obviously can't say this from his experience, but when you're a child actor, you're just there on set, you're just working or whatever else. She can really enjoy it. So obviously, the picture off to the right here is Denzel in Dakota 20 years later. So this one over here on Man on Fire was back in '04. This one was last year. So it was pretty cool to see. Um, and it's just the chemistry they have together is just, it's like those two never missed a beat. And, I was watching an interview with her, and she basically said that, Denzel keeps you on your toes. I mean, he'll improv and he'll do things and he'll say things and just to keep you, he'll the first take he'll do it off the, straight, and then they'll, Antoine and him will basically get together and they'll talk about, hey, look, could we do it this way? Could we do it that way? And he's worked with Antoine before on several different films, and this not being any different. And so, but yeah, she's like, yeah, he definitely kept me on my toes. It wasn't like I missed a beat. Deadpool. Was this the show that Rob Reiner's character in Wolf of Wall Street was watching when he got into it? I don't know. I've seen Wolf of Wall Street. It's been a long time. It might have been. Um, I wouldn't be shocked. I'm sure there's some connection there. You know, I'll have to, now that you say that, I'll have to look into that because now I'm interested in checking that out. But yeah, so this is, like I said, this is the first time that Antoine and Denzel have worked together. Okay. Obviously, their most prolific and most famous one is Training Day, right? With Ethan Hawke and him. And that was back in 2001. And he actually won his second Academy Award for Training Day. His first, by the way, came as Best Supporting Actor in 1989's Glory. But yeah, so they've gone on and they've always wanted to work together. But it was just, what was the material? What was it going to be? And so they finally came up with this and said, okay, let's do this. And then you had the first one, and that was really good. It was a really solid start. The second one was okay. 2018, Pedro Pascal was in there. You had Bill Pullman, of course, coming back. You had Melissa Leo playing the wife of Bill Pullman, but she also works for the CIA. She gets murdered. Okay, now what is the third one going to be? And once again, you can kind of track this to what James Gunn said, right? James Gunn said one thing in his in an interview he did when he was doing a junket for Guardians 3. He said that the first one was about the mother, the second one was about the father, and the third one's about them. You could really pretty much say the same thing here, right? The first one was about, well, the second one was clearly about the mother. Okay. Now, we don't know any backstory about McCall except we know he was married, we know his wife passed away, and we know he worked with the CIA. That's all we know about him. But the third one, the first one was okay, establishing the character. Maybe had just gotten out of the CIA. This one is more of, okay, this one was about him, okay, and him finding peace with everything he's done. And he actually goes back to that, and I'll talk about that in a couple minutes too. So, yeah, so there's so many good things about this movie, okay? The lighting, and this goes all the way back to cinematography. So, I was actually fascinated watching this again. So, Richard Rodriguez, okay, who's an acclaimed 3-time Academy Award winner, has worked with Martin Scorsese, he's worked with Quentin Tarantino, and, now he's worked with Antoine. And this was just a fantastic job lighting and everything else. I'll just give you a little backstory about this guy. Okay. As I said, he's worked with, he's worked with, as I said, Antoine. And so he's won the 3 Academy Awards. Okay. And he's had 7 nominations, which is incredible. Okay. Some of the films that he has done, okay, he started really, his first Oscar was on JFK. That was all the way back in 1991. His second and third came with The Aviator and Hugo. That was directed by Martin Scorsese, of course. So that actually garnered him 2 BAFTA nominations. Prior to regularly collaborating with Oliver Stone and Quentin Tarantino, he has served as an apprentice shooting second unit on Repo Man, which was like a little television series for PBS and BBC. So his work actually led him to work with Oliver Stone on films like Platoon, Born on the 4th of July. He did Wall Street, The Doors. And so then he was basically only working with Tarantino. As a matter of fact, he did Natural Born Killers, which, of course, I just did recently this month. And then he turned around. He worked with Scorsese again on Bringing Out the Dead and Kill Bill and, Volume 1 and Volume 2. So he's done a lot of stuff. So he continued to make his mark as Tarantino's DP on Django Unchained, The Hateful Eight. He worked on with Ben Affleck on Live by Night, which I was okay with. It wasn't fantastic. Um, I didn't. It wasn't great, but it's been a minute since I've seen the film. So then you had A Private War. You had Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and as a matter of fact, he just did Venom 2. And so then last year, okay, he ends up doing, he ends up doing another film that, with Will Smith. And anybody who knows what I'm talking about, so he did another film with Will Smith, okay, and he did Emancipation, and so that was this big comeback for him. And then, of course, I mean, I didn't even realize this until after the fact, but he ended up doing a film that I just talked about the other day, and that was Air. And that was fantastic. And you could really see his, style. So he just did Air the other day. Well, not the other day, but that was the last film before Equalizer 3. This guy's prolific. He's unbelievable. And he just, 3-time Academy Award, he is so good at his job. I can't wait to see what he does next. But Richard Rodriguez has a lot to do with why this film is so good. And let me backtrack a little bit, and I'll go back to Dakota in a minute. So, basically, one of the reasons why he was so good, okay, is I noticed this early on. There were a lot of shots of silhouettes. This one is probably the most prevalent right here. This is incredible. So there were 9 shots of silhouettes, and it was just fabulous. It's a completely dark room. Now that's Robert in the background. This is at the end of the movie. And all you're seeing, that light that you're seeing, is by the tablet. So the bad guy's looking at the tablet at this point, and he's trying to find out why are all these guys down. And what ends up happening is Robert pops up from behind. But look at how it's lit. That's it. You have one light. It's incredible. And so there were 9 shots. This is another shot here, guys. The only light in the room that's coming through is by that window. So there is one window. So they are in a wine cellar. At the beginning of the film, Denzel, we see, the beautiful juxtaposition between the violence and everything else. But I'll get to that in a minute. So this guy comes down, the big head honcho guy that's in the white that you see off to the side. And Denzel is just sitting there, okay? And the proxy's off. He's got a gun, obviously, and he's pointing at Denzel. And the only light that you're seeing from this is from the window above. That's it, guys. That's it. And when you see something like that, you go, wow. And then, of course, you had this shot later on, and there were 9 shots. I counted. There were 9 shots of the silhouette. It was incredible, but they all worked so well. And that's what makes it good. When you have a cinematographer that can do that, forget about it. Now, I wanted to go back, and I said I was going to touch on Dakota in a minute. So I didn't realize this, okay? But Dakota Fanning's been around the block, right? I didn't realize this until the other day. We're actually doing my research for this movie. Check this out, guys. That is Dakota Fanning in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Now, anybody who's seen Once Upon a Time in Hollywood knows it's a Tarantino film about, Brad Pitt ends up winning the Best Supporting Actor Academy Award. Part of it is based on the Manson murders, but, not too much. But that she plays Squeaky. I didn't realize that. Now, obviously, everybody knows her from Twilight, okay? I mean, she's one of those child actors that it was like Kristen Stewart, Robert Patterson, but she's been working for the last 20. But I didn't realize that. That was pretty cool. And she had that whole exchange. That was very cool to see. I was blown away. And as a matter of fact, I believe that is turning 5 this year, guys. So look out later in the year. I will be doing Once Upon a Time in Hollywood for one of my retrospectives. So go check those out. And if you haven't already, go check out the ones that are already up. This week we have 2 more coming up, and I'll get to those at the end of the show. But yeah, I couldn't believe she was in a Tarantino. I said, that's cool. That's really, really cool. So yeah, but like I said, she's been working for years, and this is probably one of the best scenes in the film, right? And by the way, I got to say something else about this too, because it was really important. The amount that she's in the film is not overwhelming, right? Everybody wanted to see Dakota back with Denzel, and it's like, oh my God, I can't believe it. But she only appeared. Now, she popped up as a supporting character, obviously, but she was only in the film like 10 minutes, every 10 minutes. So it wasn't like it was a major. So I wrote this down. We see her first appear at the 22-minute mark. Okay. Then she comes back at 37 minutes. So 15 minutes. 15 minutes goes by before we see her again. Then 44 minutes. Okay. Then 57 minutes. So she's sprinkled in just enough that she's important, but it's not overbearing. Then an hour and seven minutes, and then an hour and 17 minutes. And that hour and so that's like the finale, and then of course we have the end of the hospital scene. But it was just really good. Yeah, crazy. I know. I mean, that I couldn't believe when I saw this. I went, I know that movie. That's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It's a phenomenal film. I wouldn't even call it so much a cameo either, right? Like a cameo for me is like somebody that comes in during something that, I don't know, pick any cameo you want, right? That's not a cameo to me. I mean, yeah, she's only got a couple of scenes, but yeah. So yeah, it was really fascinating to see that. But she's sprinkled in just enough in this film that it's not overbearing to her. And I think that's so incredibly important. But yeah, so I talked about the silhouettes, the lighting, 3-time Academy Award winner. So once again, this is not the first time that Antoine and Denzel have worked together. And I think that's incredibly important to talk about, because when you familiarize yourself with a certain director, you get to work with them, and the ideas flow more and they're better. Take any actor and director you want over the course of the last 100 years. I mean, I think the 2 that everybody think of are De Niro and Scorsese, or DiCaprio and Scorsese, right? But Antoine, so Training Day was back in 2001. They've done Training Day, they've done The Equalizer, they've done The Equalizer 2, they've done The Equalizer 3, they did the reboot of The Magnificent Seven. with Chris Pratt, Vincent D'Onofrio. Denzel was in that. So they've worked together a long time. That's why I think this was so good. And something else that really, so let me, it's very rare in films when you have, when settings can become part of the story. I mean, the one that, the one I think of off the top of my head, okay, is Heat, right? And that is it. He says Equalizer. Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. It is, and that tells you something. Okay, it's like Joaquin Phoenix, and Joaquin Phoenix. So Joker 2, which is coming out later on this year, is the only sequel that Joaquin Phoenix has ever done over his entire career. That's I mean, he's been in so many films over there, but it's the only film that he's made a sequel to. Now, when you say the Equalizer being his sequels, Denzel had already said he had always wanted to be in a franchise, and he was just looking for the right one, and this was it. So, if you're lucky enough, okay, as a filmmaker and everything else, settings are incredibly, incredibly important. And as I said, Heat being the first one that comes to my mind, right? Or The Departed, okay? You want the settings, okay? You want the settings to try and be as important as the actual story. And in this particular film, okay, the setting of Italy was like a character in itself. We saw so much footage of the coast and the church. And by the way, this church is, it's very cool that, Collins or Emma Dakota's character was able to actually put in a little bit of history about the church, like it had been there for over 1,000 years. And, but this church, no joke, there were at least, I counted, I mean, I kind of lost count actually, but it was at least 10 to 12 shots of the church by itself. And it was just, the landscape was marvelous. The setting is fantastic for this. And when you have a setting that is just as good as the story, it enriches it that much more. And that was something that was extremely important that worked. And the fact too that they spoke Italian, right? I love the fact that Antoine did not use subtitles. That's incredibly important. What he did is when there were two characters having a conversation that was in Italian, he didn't use subtitles. The way you understood the conversation is by their facial expressions. What were they saying? Because it's so easy, and I think the reason why he did it, frankly, is because he didn't want a lot of people, a lot of the average moviegoers just don't like subtitles. They want to just go in, turn their brains off, so to speak, and watch a movie. They don't have to read the subtitles. And that was what he did. And so when you saw the two people having a conversation, you understood what they were saying, but it wasn't because you knew Italian. It was because you saw what they were saying, their facial expressions. So that was really cool. The other thing too is the violence. So let me get back to something about this because this is really important. In this particular movie, okay, there is violence. Okay. But it's a simple premise of we don't see, we see violence at the beginning, okay, and we see violence at the end. Now, obviously, the mafia does its thing, you know, and so that's violence. Bloody sweet violence, yes. No, but it was beautiful because the thing is, we saw it at the beginning, and then we saw it at the end, right? Um, for the first two acts of this movie, the only violence you saw was from the mafia. So anybody who's not familiar with the film, spoilers, Denzel gets shot, and there is a doctor that basically nurses him back to health. And so he watches the mafia basically try to tear this town down in so many different ways. There's even one shot, okay, and I'll talk about this right now, where basically the church that I was referring to, okay, and that's how we rehab, by the way. And that was beautiful. He walked these steps, right? That when he got to the top, he knew he was completely and totally back. Um, but there was one scene in particular where he saw this act of violence going on, and he knew he was still in the king, and he couldn't do anything. And all he did was look up, and he saw the cross, and it kind of showed you a different side of Robert because it was a more spiritual side, and because we had never seen this before. You know, he wanted to do something deep down, but he couldn't. And for the first two acts, he didn't do anything. And then the whole cafe scene happens. And that's when he twists the guy's hand and everything else. But so the violence, okay, we see all at the end. It's in the last act. And it's one of those things where he's basically he's being ruthless to these people because they, you know, there's that scene where he basically says, you know, is I am enjoying myself. For the first time, I have found peace. Okay. Do not try to take that away from me. And so, you know, he shrugs it off. The bad guy shrugs it off. And so once the third act starts and once that scene happens, it goes from 0 to 100 in a heartbeat. And that being said, shit hits the fan and gets real fast. And I loved at the end. So there's a couple of other scenes. The first one was this. When I want to go back to talk about the lighting real quick, this is when you can get the best people and get a 3-time. Now, mind you, let's talk about the lighting here. The only thing that's lighting this room up is a fire. That's it. Now, there are some candles there in the background you can see, but those aren't lit. I'm going to show you something real quick. And it's only, 10, 12 seconds. But I want you to just watch, and I'll play it a couple times because it is quick. Watch the lighting. So this is a scene where Collins basically goes into a police chief and says, look, I need to interrogate these guys. And so one of the guys is about to come in. But just watch the lighting real quick. I should say one thing. There is no sound. So because I want you, this is more of a visual than an audio type of thing. So how they get that effect, and by the way, it's completely black background, and the only thing that is lit is her face. Okay? Kind of like the silhouette scene. Okay? Going back to this. Okay? Completely black. The only thing that's lit is their face. Now, that being said, let's go back to this real quick. See how it's lit up? So the way they get that effect, okay, and by the way, that's a 3-time Academy Award winner for you. But the way they get that effect, okay, is they have either a light on the side, okay, or they have a light underneath. Completely black room. Now, this one's a little different, but completely black room, and they have a light underneath. Or they have one light overhead, and they are in just enough to where it's just lighting their face. That's it. And when you see the couple of shots, okay, that go back and forth, what you actually see the close up there. Watch the close up again. So you see how there was that, I won't say wide shot, but shot because it's a single shot. It's like this shot here with me right now. But so you have this shot, and then you have the shot in like this. So the whole face, almost the whole face is covering it. That's incredibly effective, especially when you have that. But, and then once again, you go back to this shot here. Okay. When you have a cinematographer that can do this, that's fantastic. That's absolutely fantastic. I can't say enough what it's like when you're able to do that, even this shot. So, but yeah, getting back to what I was saying about the violence is something that in the third act, it goes from 0 to 100 in no time. But the first 2 acts, we don't see anything except for the mafia. I love that. Even the final scene. Okay, this is really like the final scene. And, speaking of this, okay, this is like the end of The Equalizer, right? So anybody who has seen the first film knows that at the end of the first film, he basically goes and we see him sitting in the guy's bedroom with a bath, and the guy was showering and everything else. The was fogged up, okay, and he turns on the sink and he electrocutes the guy. As we see him walking out, Robert walking out, we see all of the bodies he killed. This time, what Antoine did, okay, is he said, okay, we're going to do the inverse. We're going to see you kill the guys. And then we're going to see you get the head honcho guy, okay, and we're going to see you kill him. Fantastic job. But it was a page right out of The Equalizer. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? But there's another shot while one of the proxies gets killed, and there's another guy that gets killed, and right as Robert is killing him, okay, there are 4 statues. Now it's Italy, so there's a little bit of nudity there or whatever, but it's about what he does is he wants the viewer to make it look like the statues are watching him die. It's just everything about it was fantastic. What else? So yeah, I talked about the tablet. I talked about this shot here. Okay. Okay. As we are going through the film at the end, okay. As we were going through the film at the end, you see that great juxtaposition while all these guys are getting killed. Okay, we see the juxtaposition. I haven't seen part 3, but where's the notion? It doesn't. So, by the way, I hope I didn't spoil anything for you. I should have put spoilers in the headline, but no, it doesn't. There is no relation in any way, shape, or form So, okay, thank you. But yeah, there's no relation in any way. But I think there's something that they can do, and I'll get to that in a minute. So, as I said, the juxtaposition there between the ceremony that they're having, okay, and the death of the final big boss here. This guy, he gets his pills. Robert feeds him his own pills, okay, and that's the stuff that's coming out of his mouth, okay. And he says, "You have 6 minutes." And by the way, I love it. At the very beginning of the film, he's like, "You have 9 seconds." At the end, he's like, "You have 6 minutes before you're dead." And you see this guy stumbling and going out and everything else, and eventually he dies. But you see the juxtaposition between life and death. And that's so incredibly good because what it did was it made me remind me of The Godfather. So anybody who's seen The Godfather knows that at the christening, so Michael orders the head of the five families, he orders their murders, but he's going to be christened the Godfather to somebody else's daughter. And so you see all of the guys get killed, but in the process, you see the christening going on. It works beautifully. And it's kind of the same premise here. You have a religious event that's going on, celebrating life and the church and everything else, and then you have somebody else dying. Hospital scene. So the hospital scene, I'll get this. So the hospital scene was great. Okay. So at the end of the movie, okay, Dakota Fanning gets blown up, not killed, but she gets nearly killed. And so Robert goes to see her. And so she's watching the headline on BBC, this guy gets arrested, this cartel gets shut down, everything else. So he comes in and he's got a bag with her. And she says, "What is this, your go bag?" And he's like, "No, it's $366,400. And he's like, "Well, what's that for?" And it's like, "It's for somebody that their whole savings, their pension was taken away from them." And so she's like, "There were millions of dollars in bearer bonds and loose cash and, whatever. And you only took 300 grand." And of course, McCall, 366,400. He's like, "Why?" He's like, how was this guy special? And he's like, "No, I gave the guy a lift." And of course, anybody who's seen the second film, it's a callback to the second film because in the second film, he was a Lyft driver. It's fantastic how they tied it all in. And then after she gets back, the last 2 minutes, not even 2 minutes, the last 30 seconds, you see her sitting at her desk and her box walks in and somebody said, "Somebody left this for you." So I should say in this scene, he says, so where did you, so she asks him, "Well, where did you find this?" And he's like, "A little black book." So he's like, "Well, what was the little black book?" And so, that's what it was. So anyways, what ends up happening is you wonder how this little black book was going to be come back, right? So at the end of it, okay, at the end of it, what you end up having is the boss comes in and says, "Look, somebody left this for you." And so, excuse me. So what ends up happening is she opens the envelope and it's a little black book. And it has names and addresses. And I thought, when I originally saw the film, I thought that, I'm like, "Oh, these are account numbers. She's going to go after all these, other accounts, blah, 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 blah." And then I stopped it And I looked, and they were names and they were phone numbers. And I believe, and I could be wrong about this, that's where it was all of the people from all the different things. Which leads me into another whole avenue. So the final shot you see is the picture. The camera pans over and there's a picture of Melissa Leo, who's her mother, and Bill Pullman, who's her father. She was the daughter of those two that worked for the CIA. Which leads me to a whole other thing, right? I think if they want, and this is just if they want, if Antoine wants to, and if Dakota wants to, I think what they could do is, I think she could be the new Equalizer. I think they pass the torch just enough. They could actually make her the new Equalizer. And I know it sounds strange, but I think it would be fantastic. And Yuki here says, no! Really? So, obviously, that's just complete speculation on my part. Complete speculation. I think what they could do, hypothetically speaking, is they could, because they kept the door open, right? This little black book's got all the names and phone numbers. And I think they could, if they wanted. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it could. The story would have to be there, though. Right? The story would have to be there. Now, I mean, because here's the thing. And you kind of feel like she would have been cheated a little because Robert kind of pushed her along a little bit. But I don't know. I mean, I think it would work. The story would have to be right. I think she'd want to work with Antoine. Here's the other thing, too. If Denzel was an EP, okay, if he was an executive producer, I think that, because let's face it, right? I mean, she's done other things, sure, but she's now at a point in her career where I think it would be really good. She is look, she's worked with everybody from Tom Cruise to Denzel Washington, and everything else. She is 94, so she just turned. As a matter of fact, she's got a birthday coming up. Her birthday is down the 23rd of February. So you're talking about 1, 2, just about a month. Okay, so she will be 40. Okay, I don't see Equalizer 4 passes the mantle to John David Washington. Maybe that's definitely a thought. That's definitely a thought. But I think that it would be really, now mind you, she'd have to want to take the role. The story would have to be good. And everything else. Look, you'd have a strong female character. Okay. You'd have another film that would do really well as far as, the Equalizer franchise. You bring Antoine back. You bring Richard Wendt back, who has written all three of them. She's got to be 40. I think it would be really cool to see that. Now, once again, that's purely speculation on my part. But I just don't see why, right? Now, I'm not saying it would be a franchise, but I think it could be if that's what Antoine wanted to do. I just think that it could be there. But yeah, this film was really, really good. I mean, like I said, it was my number 6 film of the year. I mean, obviously, I had Oppenheimer and Barbie and Poor Things and all these other films there. But I really believe that this is one of Antoine Fuqua's best. Now, obviously, Training Day is the most recognizable one, right? But there are so many correlations between Training Day and this that when you have a Training Day that's, I mean, look, he won an Academy Award for it, Denzel. When you have those two types of things and you're able to put them in another film, like the final confrontation at the Piazza, right? How did they light it up? It wasn't streetlights. It was cars. They got the cars all around, turned the headlights on, and that was how they lit it up. Fantastic job. Going back to the lighting is so key in this movie, guys. I cannot express that enough. When you have things like this, okay, or go back to the I mean, just the lighting there, it's fantastic. But once again, I think that it's all a matter of if she wants to come back. But because I think that if she wants to, and Denzel's going to be an EP on it. Anything he does, he can, right? I think he could. But yeah, that is the Equalizer 3. I loved it. Like I said, my right around my 4th or 5th best film of the year. I mean, obviously Oppenheimer and Barbie were 1, 2, and then there were a couple of others, but this was right up there. So I think this was a good movie. I really do. And I'll be honest, I think it's his second best to the franchise for Antoine. I love The Equalizer. That's kicked everything off. I would put The Equalizer 3 in the middle, and then I would put Equalizer 2 with the last one. Because the third one just tied everything up in a nice, neat bow. So I don't know. So it would be very, very interesting to see. But yeah, that is The Equalizer 3. Had a blast watching it again, and I'm going to sit down and watch another movie tonight. And that's, speaking of Academy Award winners, Jordan Peele. I'm going to be sitting down and watching Get Out tonight, and that is going to be the perfect movie for February. So I can't wait to sit down and watch that. I've seen it once, loved it. Can't wait to go back and revisit that. So what's coming up, guys? Quickly. I have an idea, and I've been The Last of Us Part 2. Okay, anybody who is a gamer and knows, the remastered version just got re-released 2 days ago. I've been really thinking about and I've been watching Game Riot, his walkthrough, and it's like 17 hours, and I just started day 1 for Abby. I'm about 10 hours into it. Anyways, I think, and I started to really, yes, I am on Tuesday. So that's actually one of the things I was going to talk about. You beat me to the punch. So what I'm going to do, not immediately, okay, I'm going to come on and do a Oscar nomination um, show after, probably afternoon sometime. I'll talk to Matthew Anderson. We'll come back. We'll talk about that. So we were definitely doing an Oscar show. You have no worries about that. But I've been really thinking about the episodes of The Last of Us Part 2. And what could they do? And how they could do it. And I'm considering what the episodes could be and everything else. I want to do a whole show on that, possibly. I'm still trying to figure out how I would do it. But nonetheless, so that's something. This upcoming week, there are 2 more retrospectives coming up for you guys. On Monday, tomorrow, we have Clear and Present Danger, 1994. Fantastic year for film, fantastic movie in general. I had a blast watching it again. I had seen it a couple times, but actually sitting down and dissecting it, watching it, so good. Then on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, you guys are going to be getting streams, okay? Tuesday is going to be Guardians of the Galaxy 3. Wednesday is going to be Creed 3. And Friday is going to be Saw 10. 3 more films that were on my, top 10 list for the year. Loved them, wanted to talk about them. Then starting in February, so then on Friday, okay, you guys are going to be getting another retrospective. That's a movie that's turning 40, another Harrison Ford classic, and that's Indiana Jones and Temple of Doom. So you guys are going to have a packed week for content. Then in February, I'm going to start sitting down and watching this other movies. Namely, Get Out is going to be the perfect movie. So Yuki says, keep your eye on Origins. Industry insiders are using their influence and leverage to artificially rig the voting for Origins as the best picture or best director. And we've seen this before, right? I've heard about the film. I haven't really seen it, but I have heard about it. Of course, going back to last year with Andrea Riseborough for the film she did, To Leslie, when she got nominated for Best Actress. And the one admission or omission, I should say, that everybody was baffled about Oscar morning was Viola Davis for The Woman King. And it was like, how did you leave that out? I do think Best Picture is pretty much all set. To Leslie, that's what it was called. Thank you, To Leslie. But I think Best Picture is pretty much it's solidified. I think so. I've been thinking about this too, and I'll go into more about this on Tuesday. But I have an idea how many movies are going to win how many Oscars. So, I think Barbie is going to end up walking out with 3. Okay. I think The Holdovers. Holdovers is going to end up walking out with 4. And Oppenheimer, I can see Oppenheimer walking out with 7 or 8. So I think that's going to be the big winner of the night. But I'll talk all about that with Matthew. And yeah, so that's going to be fun. But you guys are going to have an absolute blast watching that. And this is the most exciting time of the year. This is the most exciting time of the year. Now, one thing I'll say real quick before we get going here is if Paul Giamatti wins the BAFTA, he's a lock to win the Oscar. I already think he's going to win the Oscar. I think he'll be a lock to win the Oscar. Because, I mean, So, Best Actress, once again, if Emma Stone ends up winning for Poor Things, she will end up taking that for Best Actress, which, by the way, would be her second Oscar, Best Actress Oscar, and she's only 37. So that tells you something. But yeah, I can't wait for Tuesday. We got a bunch of stuff coming up for February, and that is going to be Black History Month. As I said, we're going to do Get Out, we're going to do 42, we're going to do The Butler, Black Panther, and everything else. In the Heat of the Night, Sidney Poitier, fantastic movies. Do the Right Thing. So when we talk, and then in the streams, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about Black filmmakers, actors, directors, like a Jordan Peele, like a Denzel Washington, like a Tyler Perry, like all these other fantastic filmmakers. In March, what we're going to do is we're going to do Marvel March. So what I'm going to do is take the 8 best Marvel movies. Now, obviously, it's subjective, but the 8 best Marvel movies, I think. And even if Black Panther is in there, I'm going to do it again. And yeah, and we're going to talk about 8 best Marvel movies that they have put together since 2008. And yeah, I'm going to do a poll, I think probably on Twitter. So guys, if you want to participate in the poll, head on over to Twitter. I'll put it up either today or tomorrow. I want to start watching a television series that I haven't seen before. I have a couple in my mind, or go back and rewatch one. So the one I was thinking about watching, and I'll have to talk to some people about it, is Breaking Bad. I've never seen Breaking Bad. So I know. So I'm thinking about doing like an episode by episode breakdown. Just a thought. Or maybe Dexter. We'll see. That's something else. So, and then if that doesn't happen, then don't forget, like in a month or two, going to be doing if I can even finish, Anatomy of a Movie. And that's basically going to talk about the themes of the movies or the production of the movie, whether it is Steve Jobs and how it was shot, or Return of the Jedi and the themes of that movie, or whatever it is. Yuki says do Babylon 5. That's a thought. I will put that down on the list, definitely. But yeah, so that's going to talk about like the themes of the production, or something about the anatomy of a movie, making the movie itself. Yeah, so The Shield. Yes, Michael Chiklis. Yeah, I'll definitely think about that. Those are 2 very good suggestions. So, but yeah, so that's what it's going to be. And so I should say, anybody who has made it to the end of the video, once you're watching this, once this is uploaded, I would say thank you. And the biggest thing I would say is that I'm trying to grow the channel. And the way I can do that is one of 2 ways. Number one, please hit that like and subscribe button, guys, if you haven't already. It tells me you're enjoying the content and all that. The other way, okay, and is memberships. Now, it's my pleasure, Dadpool. It's my pleasure. So, but my goal this year, okay, is to get 2,000 on the hashtag on the road to 2,000, okay, and 15 to 20 paid subscriptions. Now, as you can see right now, okay, and I'm going to bring this up full screen for you guys. It's free. Dadpool is a very loyal member, okay, and basically I've made these memberships as absolutely as cheap as possible. So the first one is $2.99 a month. You can't even get a gallon of gas for under $3 today. The second one is $5.99 a month, and the big one, the director one, is $10 a month. You can't get all this content on, let's say, Netflix for $10 a month. You just can't. What it would do is 2 things. Number one, it would help me provide you with the best possible way to make content. Number two, it would help me out because I want to eventually do this full time. And number three, I'll be able to go out and get bigger and better things for the channel. So everything that basically that I get is going to go back. So you guys can get the best viewing experience. Anyways, but yeah, that's if nothing else, guys, and you made it to the end, please hit that like and subscribe button. I can't say that enough because that's what gets these things out. So that's going to do it for today. So yeah, this was kind of an impromptu type of stream, but I wanted to do it because I said I was going to get it to you guys. So do the three things that you got to do. Be safe, be careful, and take care of yourself. I will see you back on Tuesday, and we'll be talking all about Guardians of the Galaxy 3. In the meantime, take care of yourselves and have a good rest of the weekend, guys. Bye-bye.